Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at a unique little device here. This is going to be useful for those of you that do a lot of traveling. And we're going to take an in-depth look at both the features and the configuration of this device right after the intro. Hey, quick reminder folks, remember to hit that thumbs up as it helps others find quality content and allows us to continue to make videos like this for you. Click on subscribe and then hit the bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. Okay everyone, so we're going to start out this video by just taking a look at what this device is, and then I'm going to take you into the configuration page and we're going to look at all the features and functions that this device actually has. Now this device supports 2.4 gigahertz and it also supports 5 gigahertz throughput up to 750 megabit per second on the AC, which is the 5 gigahertz. It also has a micro SD slot, and you can use that to store files and things. So this is what the device looks like. And here we can see an illustration of the LED lights on the front. Have the reset button and the mode switch on the side. And you have one WAN Ethernet port. So in addition to all the other functions, it will actually plug into an Ethernet port and act as a bridge that way as well. You have two LAN ports. And of course the USB 2.0 and then the power port. And then the TF card slot. So here we have all possible methods that can be used to access the internet. In the first scenario here, we have just a standard Ethernet cable plugged into the WAN port. In scenario number 2, we are repeating a Wi-Fi signal. In scenario 3, we're using a USB cellular modem. And in scenario number 4, we're tethering to our mobile device using a USB cable. Now in scenario number 2, for the Wi-Fi network, this can either be a Wi-Fi network at a hotel or campground, or if you don't have a USB cable to tether to your mobile device, it can use the hotspot on your mobile device. And it can use Wi-Fi to connect to that. In the next illustration, we can see some of the features that the device has. It has a throughput of up to 17 megabit per second on VPN. It has some multimedia functions as well. With the micro SD card, it can act as a network attached storage server. So a lot of functions here in this little device. You can see another illustration here. It does support QoS. And then here we have the UI. Now there are two UIs on this device. There is the basic UI, and then there's an advanced UI, which we'll get into here in a minute. But this is basically what the device is. And as you're going to see here in a moment when we get into the web interface, this is a very powerful device. Before we do that, we're just going to take a quick look at the price. As of the time of this recording, the device is about $70 plus tax. So not a whole lot of money. And if you do a lot of traveling, this is going to be money well spent, folks. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the web interface of this device and see what it can do. Okay, everyone. So here we are on the web interface, and it is kind of nice looking. But this is the basic web interface. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter my password in here. Now the default password out of the box is going to be all lowercase, all one word, good life. But I've changed that. This is a device that I'm already using. I'm going to go ahead and click Login. And when I log in, I'm going to be presented with the admin panel. Now in here, we can see the things that we can do. Now I don't have an Ethernet cable hooked up, but that's a very quick way that you can get the device working. Is just to hook an Ethernet cable into the WAN port and plug it in. For example, if you're in a hotel room and they have an Ethernet port, you can plug that in and this device will get its IP and then create a secure network for all of your devices. I don't have that, so the next thing I can do is set this up as a repeater. And what this is going to do is this is going to scan for any available Wi-Fi networks. You would connect to the Wi-Fi network through the interface here, and then it's going to do basically the same thing. It's going to create a secure network for all of your devices. Now, up here you'll see this is blurred out. This is my Wi-Fi network, and that's the network this device is going to use for all of my personal devices. And the router acts as a firewall. So to the network that we're connecting to, for example, in most cases, it's going to be a public network. So that public network is only going to see the router. It's not going to see any of your personal devices that are behind this router. So this provides a very high level of security. And then it's also going to provide additional security if you take advantage of the VPN. The next thing we can do is we can plug in a cellular modem and we can connect all of our devices to the internet that way. But the way I'm going to show you today is by tethering. This is going to be to connect to our mobile device with a USB cable and utilize the tethering capability of our mobile device. So right now I don't have anything plugged in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach the USB cable. I have an iPhone. I'm going to attach that to this device. And now we can see tethering. It's automatically tethered to my device. We can see the IP address that's been assigned, the net mask, the gateway, and the DNS server. So at this point, I now have an internet connection. And all the devices that are connected to my private Wi-Fi network also have an internet connection. So this is very basic, but it's very easy to configure. Next, we'll click on the wireless section. And in here, you're going to see that I've configured this for my own Wi-Fi. And so I've got my own Wi-Fi network and my own password in here. But we can see we have two separate networks. We have a 2.4 gigahertz band and we have a 5 gigahertz band. And we can set some options here. We can also even configure guest Wi-Fi networks. And we can do channel optimization. So if I click on that, it's going to scan the environment and it's going to see if the channel that we have configured is the best channel for the device to be using. And if it's not, it will update that. We can also turn the bands on and off by clicking these buttons. So for example, if we only wanted to use 2.4 gigahertz, we could turn off the 5 gigahertz radio. Okay. Next, we click on clients. We can see right now I only have one client connected. But anything that's connected to your Wi-Fi, you'll see the name, IP, and MAC address of that device. You can also block the device. Although if you need to block the device, you may want to consider changing your Wi-Fi password so that you have some better security. You shouldn't need to come in and block devices out of here. but you have the capability nonetheless. You can also enable real-time speed and traffic statistics, but if you do that, it's going to increase the load of the CPU on the router, so you probably don't want to do that permanently. I would only do that if you need to use it for troubleshooting purposes. Next, we can upgrade the firmware. Now there's a couple ways we can do this. We can do an online upgrade. We can do a local upgrade. And we can configure auto upgrade. The online upgrade is probably the easiest and is the recommended way to do this. And here we can see our current version, the time that that version was compiled, and the last update. So as you can see on my device, the last update and the current version match. So this router is up to date. We can do a local upgrade. We can drag the firmware file here and upgrade the device. We can set it to automatically upgrade at a certain time of day. I wouldn't do this because if you're traveling and something goes wrong, it could be a huge inconvenience. So I would not enable the auto upgrade, but if you want to, you have that capability. Next, we have the firewall. And the firewall can do some basic things under this interface here. We can forward ports. We can open up ports on the router. Okay, and it gives you a little description here of what they do. We can also specify a host on the local network as a DMZ, which means it's going to expose that device to all traffic from the internet. I wouldn't recommend using that unless you really know what you're doing, because it can be a huge security issue. Next, we have VPN. And here we have a number of different things. We have an open VPN client. We have an open VPN server, so this device can act as a server. WireGuard, same thing. We have a client and a server. We have an internet kill switch. So basically, this is going to prevent clients from connecting to the internet at all. They're going to be forced over the VPN. And that's a good thing for security, and it's really nice that this device has that capability. If you don't have the router set up as a VPN client and you enable this button though, none of your clients are going to be able to access the internet. Next, we have VPN policies. So this is nice because we can configure specific domains and IP addresses or MAC addresses to use certain VPNs. Or we can configure those devices not to use VPNs. Or we can configure a certain domain not to go over the VPN. So this is very useful. It's very nice that you have that kind of configuration here. Next, we have Tor. So this can provide some degree of anonymity. I'm not going to get too much into this, but it is a feature the device has. Anyone that's looking for anonymity has probably heard of the Tor project and would probably like this function. Next, we have applications. Now, this device has plugins. And here we have a list of all the plugins or packages. So if you're familiar with Linux, you'll know that there are a lot of different packages that you can install on a Linux system. And that's what this area here is going to allow you to do. We can search for packages and install them. And as we can see, a lot of these packages are already installed. We can uninstall them. The other thing we can do from here, and it's probably a good idea to do from time to time, is update the existing packages on the system. Next, we have file sharing. And multimedia file sharing. So the nice thing about this is you can add storage to the device with an SD card, and you can copy files there and share them out. We have remote access. So you can use the service Good Cloud, and you can enable Good Cloud on this device to manage it. You can also use a dynamic DNS service to access this device from the internet. We also have a captive portal. So what a captive portal does, if you're not familiar with that, is it's going to display a web page when the user needs to connect to the Wi-Fi network. Now, if the guest network is disabled, the captive portal function is not available. Okay, and opening the captive portal will cause the block function to fail. So the guest network is going to allow you to forward any traffic that connects to the guest network to a certain URL. And this URL will provide authorization. It could be a login. It could just be something as simple as, a network policy warning. And it also specifies the amount of time the client is able to stay on the network before they have to go through the authorization process again. So again, outside the scope of this video, I'm not going to get too much into this, but this is a nice function. This is something that's usually only available on more high-end commercial products. Next, we have IGMP snooping. So, and this tells us what it does. It listens to the IGMP protocol package, extracts this corresponding information, and establishes and maintains the layer 2 multicast forwarding publication, and then forwards the multicast group data to the host that joins the multicast group, while other hosts cannot receive the multicast group data. So IGMP snooping is something that is available. It is not enabled by default. And if you want to enable that, you can enable it, and you can select the version that you wish to use as well. Next, we have more settings, and this is where we get into some more advanced configuration. So under the admin password, that's pretty self-explanatory. Here we can change the admin password. We can specify the LAN IP of this router, and we can also specify the start and end addresses for the DHCP server. We can set up static IP address binding. Some of you may be more familiar with this by the term of reservation. So for example, if you have a printer or something that you always want to have the same IP address, you put the MAC address here, the IP you want it to have here, you click add, and that device will always get the same IP address from the router. Next, we have our time zone. We can clone a MAC address. This is something interesting, but you can use this to clone the MAC address of another device, and the router will use that MAC address instead of its factory default MAC address. We have IPv6 functionality. By default, this is turned off, and I usually leave IPv6 off unless you have a specific reason you need to enable that. But you can do it. You can set a custom DNS server. And you also have some additional DNS settings. So, and you have these little question marks here. So you have DNS rebinding attack protection. Okay. That's enabled by default. We can override the DNS settings for all clients. So what this is going to do is if your client has a manually specified DNS server, this is going to override that and force all the traffic to use the DNS server you specify here. We can enable DNS over TLS. If we do that, we're going to have to select one of these providers. Okay. Doesn't look like we can actually specify a custom address there. DNS crypt proxy. Okay. And then here's our manual DNS server setting, and we can specify a primary and secondary DNS here, and that will override the DNS of either the ISP or the Wi-Fi network that you're connecting to and rebroadcasting. Next, we can configure what the buttons do. So this is the mode switch button that's on the side of the device. And we can use this for a couple of interesting things here. This is really, really nice and useful that they have this. I'm impressed with this feature. So OpenVPN or WireGuard. So you can toggle the VPN on and off with a hard switch on the side of the device. You can also toggle on and off the Tor functionality. Really useful. Makes it very, very simple and very easy to turn a VPN or the Tor on and off. By default, it doesn't do anything. Next, we have network mode. So here we can change things around a little bit. Now, I recommend that you always leave this as a router because it's going to provide an extra layer of protection to all of your devices. But in some cases, you may wish to use this as an access point, an extender to extend an existing Wi-Fi network, or you may want to put it in WDS mode. Next, we can actually revert the firmware. So basically what happens is when you upgrade the firmware on this device, it stores a backup firmware image. So for some reason, for example, if you enabled the automatic upgrades, for some reason it messed your device up, you can revert back to the previous firmware version. I still wouldn't enable the auto updates though. But again, this is another very useful feature. If you're constrained for time and don't have time to troubleshoot, simply reverting back to the previous version is a very good way to fix the problem until such time as you can figure out where the problem is. And lastly, we have advanced. And this is where we get into the advanced UI for the device. Okay, so we're just going to click this link here. This is going to take us to the advanced UI. And the username is going to be root. Password is going to be the same as your password for the standard interface. And it's going to load this up. And you're going to see this is pretty advanced here. This shows us all the information about the system, the memory, network information, number of active connections, DHCP leases, information about the wireless networks, and it even gives us information about the devices that are connected and provides us Wi-Fi signal information. Very useful in troubleshooting problems. So this is under the overview, and we have a whole status menu up here. For the firewall, we have a system log, and we have some advanced things under here. For example, administration. So here we can enable SSH access. Again, this is probably going to be outside of the scope of what most people are going to do with this device. But if you are a power user, this device has a lot of powerful, very powerful features that you can take advantage of. For example, we have scheduled tasks. I mean, this is really powerful stuff here. We can configure the LEDs. We can back up and flash firmware. And I'll show you some things under here. For example, we can go into the firewall and we can configure rules. Port forwards, routes. Some very powerful stuff here. And if we go to custom rules, this actually allows us to edit the configuration file for the firewall. So you can get really advanced on this. I go into wireless. I mean, this is pretty advanced stuff. So you can either have a simple device that has a very powerful feature set, or you can get into the advanced interface here and really drill down and configure this device the way you want it. So that's going to wrap this one up, folks. This is a very powerful device. Highly recommended if you do a lot of traveling. It'll allow you to use a VPN for all your devices. So for example, if you have, let's say, a laptop, a mobile device, a tablet, you can connect those devices to this router, share a public internet connection, and use a VPN across all those devices at the router level. And it provides you a very high level of security. It also isolates all your devices from everything else that's on that public network. So these things are increasingly important these days. Do you have one of these devices? If so, comment below and let us know how you like it. We always look forward to great conversation down in the comments section. Check out these great videos and playlists. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and thanks for watching.